Welcome to Autism ADHD TV. It is the place to be for parents and professionals. I'm your host, Holly Blanc Moses, the mom psychologist who gets it. We dive into all kinds of important information like behavior, social skills, and learning. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Dr. Amanda Seavey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am thrilled that you are here. So I'm going to introduce you real quick.
Great.
So Amanda is a licensed psychologist and the founder of Clarity Psychological Wellness in Raleigh, North Carolina. She specializes in the treatment of sleep disorders, depression, anxiety, and trauma, utilizing mindfulness-based therapies. And she completed her training at the University of Tennessee and Duke University Medical Center. So those are mindfulness-based therapies, so important, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So good.
Yeah.
So the reason why we were kind of coming together on this podcast today and why I'm so excited that you're here is I had come across your assertiveness rights, and I love that so much. And I think that it's such a powerful the rights that we need to know that we have. So because this is incredibly important for parents and teachers and therapists and children, we are actually going to make this into a two-part. So your 7 assertiveness rights. Today we're going to talk about the first 4. Sound good?
Yes, it sounds great.
Yes, so good. Okay, so Amanda, why don't you define assertiveness for us? I know some people think of it in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think of assertiveness as really an effective, efficient communication style that is both direct and respectful. And we think about this as building confidence and improving social communication skills, as well as maintaining healthy, happy relationships. So we see, things like more just general life satisfaction resulting from having these assertiveness skills. And these assertiveness rights are kind of the building blocks for those assertiveness skills.
I love that. Okay. So I don't know what comes up for every particular listener that hears the word assertiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I think as a woman, I don't know if you feel this way. I have heard, and now I'm going to be 46, so I've been around for a while. I have heard things like, well, that's rude if you're assertive. Or you're supposed to just go with everything other people do. And you're not supposed to say what you want. And so when we hear assertiveness, I love how you defined it because it really will create boundaries. It will create more peace. And getting comfortable with that word, I think, is so important.
It is. You're right. There's so much placed on us just in expectations of how we behave, staying small, staying quiet. And we learn those things just kind of throughout life. So those messages run deep, and it's really, really important to take a hard look at them.
Absolutely. And so that's why that's so good that we're doing that today. Because if you don't give yourself permission to be assertive, no one will.
That's exactly right. Yes.
No one's going to do it for you.
That's right. And it's kind of this idea of, what is important to me, and that's what I need to sort of put at the forefront of my assertiveness. Nobody can know what that is for me. It's all very individual. So it is up to us to say it, to know ourselves, and to be able to then communicate it to other people.
Absolutely. And so I think, again, it's so deeply embedded in us to really not tell people what we need, not put ourselves in the front or even anywhere near the top. Right? And so, then we're not putting everyone else before us, and that makes us, bad or selfish or whatever words come up for that. But it doesn't have to be that way. It really is a mind shift around this word and recognizing your needs. So people don't realize that there is a cost, right? There's a cost for us if we don't tell people what we need.
Yes, and sometimes a huge cost. It can have really hurtful, detrimental consequences to us when we don't share those things.
Exactly. And so, sometimes people do this for different ways where they stay quiet or they don't say what they need or they don't say what they want. And sometimes that could be, would you agree, to avoid conflict?
I think a lot of times that's a big factor is that we think of, we don't want to make waves. We don't want to have that confrontation. And I think even a step further than that is that a lot of times conflict and confrontation are bringing up for us this fear of rejection or abandonment. It might go even that deep. So, thinking about what is really at the heart of this for each of us, for each individual.
It's important for sure. So there's also that other part, like when we say there is this personal cost, and there really is, when we don't say how we're feeling or giving us, again, the right to be assertive. There's also that flipping part where we can say, wow, this is a little uncomfortable to talk about, but I think it's important, is, I know, and for me in particular, because the Wired Differently podcast, we're all about being authentic and real here.
Yes.
Thinking, well, if I'm assertive and I say what I want or I need support or whatever, that means that I can't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't feel good either.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely true, because we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we were taught to put that much pressure on ourselves to be able to just handle it. And then we all look around and we see each other seemingly handling it, doing it all, right? We're not really seeing behind the curtain. And so then it starts to feel a bit like, oh my gosh, everybody else can do it all. Why can't I do it all? And it really can kind of start a bit of a spiral that way.
Definitely. So, really staying where we are, if we're not being assertive, letting people know what we want, letting people know the cost to us, recognizing those things, putting in those boundaries, that's hard, right? If we remain the same, that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also hard to shift and become more assertive. So, we have to kind of pick our hard and
That's
decide,
right.
what does this hard lead to? Really the same thing as always. It's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we shift and look at this other hard and discomfort, becoming more assertive, it ultimately does, even though it starts out hard, and it doesn't mean it's going to be easy always, but we can get better at being assertive. So when we talk about these first 4 assertiveness rules, we're actually going to talk about the how as well. Like, how do we do this? We know it's important, but where do we start?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you ready for number 1?
Yes.
All right, here we go, everyone. This is a big one. It's almost even hard to say.
Yeah.
The right to make mistakes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think that this is such a big one. It's why I often start here, because I think it's one of the hardest things that we battle internally is these expectations, again, to be able to do it all and to do it all well. So it's, this idea that we can sort of, be perfect. Maybe even there are those that feel like, oh, I know I can't be perfect, but I've got to try, right? That might even be how this kind of comes up, is that, yeah, I know I can't actually get there, but mistakes are unacceptable still. So it's sort of saying like, no, it's my right to do that. Making mistakes means I'm putting myself out there. I'm trying new things. I'm human. And isn't that incredible?
I love that. And when you put the word right in front of it, it really brings on, at least for me, a feeling like it's okay I should be doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about I should be shamed, right? When I make a mistake, that's shame. There's something wrong with me. I'm bad. I'm less. All the things that can come in and feel pretty uncomfortable for us. What if, again, it was flipped? We looked at mistakes. It's the same thing. Mistakes are mistakes. But if we flip the way we look at it and we have the right, that changes everything.
It does. And you're absolutely right. There's so much that we interpret as, a reflection of who we are. And my mistakes are not a reflection of who I am. They're just a reflection of my humanity, that I'm a human being. But we often sort of interpret it that way as, yes, this is about who I am. And then it does trigger so much shame. So I even take it a step further sometimes and try to celebrate the mistakes, right? Like congratulate them in myself to say like, well, look at that. Look what you did there. That's amazing. That was a stretch for you. That was difficult for you. And you did it anyways. That's amazing. And instead of it being even just, it's okay, it's all right. It's like, that's amazing.
Yes. And so making mistakes, again, are an opportunity to learn. So oftentimes I'll hear from patients or patients' parents kind of describing this need for perfection. And that kind of goes back and speaks to what you were saying. Mistakes are a reflection of my worth,
Yes.
right? So if I am a perfectionist, or I call myself that, or if I'm constantly trying to be perfect and make no mistakes, that means I must be good.
Exactly. Exactly. And in truth, really, we are so much more than that. We are so much more than what we do or these mistakes that we might make.
Yes. And so when we're talking about the how do you have the right? So let's bring up some strategies that we can use.
Yeah, so I think, one of the first things that I think about doing is noticing really what's happening with this internal dialogue. What comes up? What shows up? And then first just being able to identify it like, there it is. I see you. I see this sort of like critic coming in and telling me this isn't okay. And starting to kind of see that as almost just an aspect of us, not who we are, right? Oh, there's that voice again, right? So just identifying it can be a step towards giving ourselves permission, giving ourselves the right.
Yes, so good. And then also talking about, like you mentioned earlier, is celebrating them.
Yes.
So when you learning is a process. And we always talk about learning. Learning is important, maturing is important, all these things. But with learning, there will be not maybe mistakes, there will be mistakes.
Yeah, it's
And
a natural part of the process, 100%.
it is absolutely a natural part. Instead of saying I'm shamed, I'm messed up again, all those things is, wow, like you said, I am learning. And thank goodness for mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's absolutely true that, and I remember it, my first couple years in graduate school, I was under so much stress and pressure to just know and to be on top of things. And I remember someone said to me, "You're not supposed to know. That's why you're here."
Yes. Yes, that's right. And so instead of looking at it like I'm supposed to know, I should be perfect, I should be able to get this right. And looking at it as a human instead and being gentle with yourself. And also, apologizing when it is your mistake, right? If you make a mistake and it impacts another person, that's okay too. And to also model that. And, I think that is incredibly important for parents and teachers and therapists to model that for children. And,
Absolutely.
and all children, but specifically, since we are on the Wired Differently podcast, talking about children who often think that they make mistakes continuously and they're constantly corrected. There's so many times I'll hear from my patients them saying, I always mess up. I never get anything right. I'm just going to mess it up anyway. Why should I even try? And if we can help them and ourselves learn that mistakes are supposed to happen, what an amazing way to change how you feel about yourself.
Yes, exactly. And it's like you said, there's an opportunity that comes up there. When we say to someone, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, if it did in fact impact them, then there's a point of connection that happens, right? That might be that someone says then back to us like, it's okay. And it feels good to hear that. And then we feel sort of cared for, in that relationship. And so there's opportunity that can come up there. And I think the line to kind of look out for is this space where we start over apologizing, which we do a lot out of habit. Oh, I'm sorry, when we really haven't done something wrong per se, right? We sort of like, run into a door jam or something, and we're like, oh, I'm sorry. And it's like, this is not something that I've done wrong. It's just this reflexive word that we use a lot. And so asking that question, is there something to apologize for here? If in fact there is, make the appropriate apology. Don't over apologize. Don't sort of, put yourself down while you're apologizing, but make that appropriate apology. Connect through that if you can, and then let it be.
I love that. And you don't have to keep carrying it around. And I think that's what happens with our children, our students, and our clients is they keep carrying it around. And really, most of us do as well. Yeah. So we can do this for ourselves and again, model that. If a child makes a mistake for an assignment, like, yeah, of course, like you said, of course you would. You're not supposed to know. And that's how you learn. Mistakes are not to feel bad. It really doesn't need to be that way. And I love the way you said, let's celebrate that. Because when you celebrate those mistakes, then you can also celebrate what you learned from them. And really that's the main part. And like you said, let's be human because we actually are. Like it's okay. We have the right to make mistakes. So, so good. All right. Well, let's go on to the next one. The right to change your mind.
Yes. Yeah, this is a great one. And it's interesting, but there seems to be an idea out there that changing your mind sort of means something negative about you. But in fact, I think what it can reflect is a growth mindset, right? That we're taking in new information all the time and that we're reacting to that or incorporating that information flexibly. And in that flexibility, there's so much opportunity. So to say, or to shame ourselves or even others because you said this before and now you're saying this, it's, well, yes, of course. I have new information. There are new circumstances. And so that, allowing myself to take in that new information, be flexible and sort of respond appropriately to new information, I think is a healthy thing to do.
I agree. And I think, being able to, again, give yourself the freedom, give yourself permission to be able to do that. And I'm going to just use an example. Say you are a parent with a child with a 504, an IEP, and you are in an IEP meeting and you kind of decide, the team decides on these goals, and then you look at them again and they don't seem to be working, right? So it's okay to come back to the table. You don't have to wait for a long time. You have the information that you had at that moment. Now you have new information.
Yes, exactly. And some of us are more feeling processors. Some of us are more cognitive in our processing. And so if we go with our first reaction and then feel like we're trapped there, that it doesn't work for most of us. We need to sort of sit with things and be with them. And I think that this is sort of saying, like, you have the right to do that, to have a reaction, to have it change, to think one way and then think another way. And that's well within your right to do that.
I love that. And so when you were talking about, we've been talking about the hows, I love the idea and the way you said, that's the information, again, I had at the time. Now I have new information.
Mm-hmm.
And based on this new information, this is now the direction I want to go. And I think it's powerful to be able to provide words for people to use when this is a new skill. And I love that. I knew what I knew when I knew it. And now I have this new information. So it's so good. All right, let's move on to the third one, which is so powerful, the right to ask for what you want. This is, you would think it sounds so simple, but it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, there is an idea that, well, there are needs and there are wants, and that one of the ways that we often sort of abandon ourselves in a sense is that we set aside our desires. Oh, well, if it's not needed, then it's not important. It doesn't matter. And it does matter, right? To honor our desire, our wants in the world is just critical for our relationship with ourself.
Definitely. So when you recognize, like really being that first step, what do I want? Because if you're squashing it, if you're putting it down and like, that's a want, that's not a need, that's still putting yourself really far down the line. Like what I want doesn't matter. What I want is important. What I want might make other people uncomfortable. Or saying what I want is something must be wrong with me because I should just make it happen or deal with the situation. So we're really, looking at all of those underlining thoughts and feelings that are coming up, because whether, it's uncomfortable even to say that, I am afraid to ask what I want, like what's going to happen, what will be the reaction of that other person. But like you said, assertiveness, it's not disrespectful.
Right. And it's, sometimes I think of it, assertiveness, as the meeting point where someone shares with me their, needs and desires and boundaries, and I share with them mine. And that balance point, that meeting of those two things is actually this really healthy place that we find within relationships. If we aren't sharing our wants, then we're going to miss that point. We're going to miss where that meeting place would and could be.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, because I think naturally people think if you ask for what you want, you're overbearing. You're, again, selfish. You're only you know what I mean? All those sort of underlining things that come up, and you are taking up all that space. It's not that you're going to that middle, when really that's what it is. And if you don't ask for what you want, you will, and I'm throwing out different scenarios, things will remain the same at your work.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody will, think you're fine with what's happening if you don't say what you want. Also, modeling for your child or your student, being able to let them know what they want is important. What they want matters. And what we're showing them, even though we don't mean to, what we're showing them is just stay quiet, accept what's given to you. What you want doesn't really matter.
That's exactly right. That there's this message of your needs, your wants, who you are, your full sort of humanness, right, is secondary. That's to be set aside for someone else's, needs and wants and all of that. And I think, sometimes when I'm, in these situations where I'm struggling with, how do I share this? I notice that I feel like I'm taking something from someone else to share my own wants. I think in truth, though, if you think about it from the other side, if you have someone that you care about and they're not sharing with you what they want, most of us have this reaction of like, oh, no, I want to know what you want. I want to understand sort of what's going on for you with where your boundaries are. And so thinking about it as, no, actually we work together as a team in our healthiest relationships, to say, okay, let's find this point where, how can we get some of these needs and wants met for each of us?
Exactly. And so, when you think about collaboration, and maybe we can kind of look at that word in this situation, the right, it's not natural for me to even say this. The
Yes.
right to ask for what you want. And I'm going to throw out some examples, is a child who thinks better while they pace, right? In the classroom, or maybe pace in the back of the room. Well, they feel like they don't have the right to say that because they're supposed to sit constantly, and all their energy and all their thoughts and everything is connected to just sitting, and they can't even hear the teacher. So what if that child knew that they had to ask the right to ask for that? That would be amazing.
Absolutely.
We always talk about self-advocacy, and a lot of times, and we don't mean this, but a lot of times we're not really modeling that. The right to listen to music while you're doing your work, having headphones on in the classroom maybe, or while you're remote learning. What does that look like? So there are so many different things that we can do to not only say what we want and feel good about it, not feel shamed and not feel bad and not feel that we're putting other people out, but people will not know what you want unless you tell them.
It's absolutely true. We are actually doing something both for the relationship and for the other person when we share these things.
And sometimes this comes into play, not sometimes, always. Like relationships, it doesn't matter if it is a parent-teacher. It doesn't matter if it is a teacher-child or child-parent, or, a partner to a partner, a family member to a family member, even though that seems to be a little even more difficult. So when we think about what we want and what we need, it doesn't matter so much about our anticipating what someone else needs. So for instance, if you are a child who has a lot of sensory needs, and it's the holidays and you're visiting other extended family, what does that look like? Being clear about what you need, the parent being clear about what your child needs, and being okay with that.
Yes.
They don't eat everything that's served. That's okay. Maybe they need to take breaks away from the table. Maybe they need a separate guest bedroom to go hang out for a while. And those are things that we really do want to model, for our children, so they don't have to feel the shame and feeling bad because someone else has an expectation. But sometimes they still have that expectation. Right? It could go that way, which is fine. That doesn't mean you don't say what you want. And you can be okay and feel good in that. And the other way looking at it is they don't know, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe if they did know what you needed or wanted, they would be more accommodating.
Yeah, this is, this assertiveness point is really in between aggressiveness and passivity. It's this idea that we're not saying you must do this. You have to do this. It's saying this is what I need and want. And if the other person is also being assertive and honoring their own assertiveness rights, then they have the ability at that point to sort of share where their boundaries are and what their needs and wants are. And it becomes, like you said, collaborative in that way. This is all not to say, oh, I disregard everyone else's needs and wants and their feelings and their, position. It's honoring that at the same time as you're honoring your own.
Exactly. I love that. And collaboration is so incredibly important, because you also don't get to grow and become better collaborators if you don't actually accept that you have the right to ask for what you want. So let's move on to number 4, the right to experience and express your own feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is right along those lines of, expressing the wants and desires, right? To have, it might even start with a feeling before you understand what the want and desire is, but we really want to say to ourselves that the emotional, aspect of our experience, regardless of what it is valid. It's coming from somewhere. It's meaningful, and it's important information to take a look at. We miss out on information if we just disregard our emotional experience. I think of it like the, dashboard of a car, where sometimes your check engine light comes on or your change oil light comes on. These emotional experiences really help us understand what our needs and wants are, and kind of where we are in the world, right? And how we're relating to the people around us.
It's so true. And I think once you get better and better at knowing that you have the right, right, you can feel the way you feel. You have to give yourself, again, we said at the beginning, permission.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel your feelings, and you don't have to decide that's a bad feeling, I'm not going to feel that, or I can't feel that and I can't express that
Mm-hmm.
because what I want isn't important. Or, I'm just supposed to sort of be quiet and get along.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah,
you're suffering.
that's right. That's exactly right. And I think that the idea that if we disregard our, feelings, that they'll go away is really not the case. Oftentimes it grows, it kind of sits there and becomes even more heavy, right? When we disregard it and sort of push it aside. So absolutely acknowledging, allowing that to be there is so important.
Right. And when you talk about how that impacts relationships, it's incredible. And again, I was kind of looking at some examples, and again, the holidays coming up, and when I think of extended family, and I know a lot of parents have told me that that's very difficult for them. If something is uncomfortable around family, then you're just supposed to be quiet and get along. But really, it's not about being mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about not saying, that this is important, because your feelings are important. And again, all because someone doesn't accept what you're saying doesn't mean you shouldn't say it.
Absolutely.
Because you can suffer in silence, or you can say, I said this in a respectful way. At least I am practicing my rights.
Yeah, and it really does build an internal sense of worth when we are honoring our own position, our own experience. It does kind of build a relationship with ourselves that's strong and authentic and, self-accepting, when we are sort of saying, no, this is important. And the action of saying it out loud actually sends that message back internally that, yes, this is worthwhile. This is important. This matters.
Exactly. And you, again, have the right to feel the way you're feeling. Um, Not long ago, I was on the fence of whether to formally discuss my frustration with some school administration. And I thought, oh, I need to stay quiet. I don't want to upset anyone. But it really wasn't about that. It was about, that's okay to have this feeling, but I'm also expressing it in a respectful way. So I can decide to not have things change, or I can say, I am formally requesting this via email.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's so important to do. I think the alternative is really that we shut it all down. We don't acknowledge that those feelings are there, and then they kind of fester a bit. And we find ourselves reacting, lashing out at some point because we have so much that we've bottled up. It's keeping the beach ball underwater. We can only hold it there for so long before it's going to come up. Someone's going to say something and we're going to sort of have that, reaction that isn't, it's too emotional to really be respectful. It's great to sort of say it and deal with it as it comes up so that we can do so in a really respectful and kind way.
I agree. And I love that example because resentment can build, anger, frustration, all of those things when you're pretending you're fine and you don't ask for what you want. You can have the right still. And like you said, you're sort of letting that go. It doesn't have to hold you underwater while it's impacting your body and impacting your mental health in such negative ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Even when a parent is communicating with their child, I will tell my kids if they are hurting my feelings, and being able to tell them that. And because it's, this is how I'm feeling. I want you to know. And whether they take that information, whatever they do for it, the point is that I'm doing that for myself. I'm saying that what you just said really hurt my feelings.
Yeah, and it's such a great sort of modeling behavior.
Right. Oh, goodness. Okay, so we talked about so many important things. Let's review really quick. The right to make mistakes, the right to change your mind, the right to ask for what you want, and the right to experience and express your feelings. And again, these are just the first 4. And what we wanted to do is break up the 7 because they're all so important. So the next time in part 2, we're going to be talking about the last 3.
Awesome. This is great.
So good. Okay. So, Amanda, I know people are going to want to learn more about you. How do they do that?
Yeah. So I am on Instagram. You can find me at Raleigh Psych Well. And then my website has got all of my contact information on it, which is claritypsychologync.com. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you. This was wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like this episode, please share it with someone. It may just be what they need to watch today. If you're a parent, I'd love if you came on over and joined our Facebook group, Autism ADHD Group for Parents. If you're a therapist or educator, come on over to our group, Autism ADHD Group for Therapists and Educators. You're going to find those links right down there in the notes. Thanks so much, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.
All content provided is protected under applicable copyright, patent, trademark, and other proprietary rights. All content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. No content is intended to be a substitute for professional medical or psychological diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Information provided does not create an agreement for service between Holly Blanc Moses Crossvine Clinical Group, the interviewee, Holly Blanc Moses LLC, and the recipient. Consult your physician regarding the applicability of any opinions or recommendations with respect to your symptoms or medical condition or the symptoms or medical condition of your family member. Children or adults who show signs of dangerous behavior toward themselves and/or others should be placed immediately under the care of a qualified professional.